Yo, we got a new Sun God Nika. Luffy goes Gear 5 again, so we got 2 on the battlefield at once, if you can believe it. Vegapunk's broadcast shockingly resumes to give even more information, and more happens in this insane chapter, so make sure to stay tuned for that. Chill parking within and smash that like button if you enjoy seeing One Piece reviews like this one and want to keep them coming. Make this the video you join the Nakama if you haven't already by subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you don't miss future One Piece reviews and updates. And now, without further ado, let's jump into it, spoilers and all. So in the last chapter, Zoro amazingly blocked Elder Nusjuro's attack with his Rashomon attack. They were both sent flying, but Zoro's interference gave them time for the ship to push off, as he told them to get the ball rolling, and he added that he would jump on later with Jinbei. I love how Jinbei threw him like a Zoro shuriken to stop Nusjuro, and then caught him when he flew back from the impact as well. The Zoro and Jinbei dynamic and their working together has been absolutely great. Luffy, Dory, and Broggy were approaching the ships fast because War Curie joined the other Gorosei, besides Nusjuro of course, to attack the Ancient Giant. The Giants were having a bit of a problem defending their ships as Vice Admiral Dahl was going ham with the punches, and Vice Admiral Bluegrass wasn't helping matters with her laser shooting sea beast weapon. Vegapunk said, "Those who bear the name of D, within you there is a ... and then the broadcast cut off as the ancient robot was attacked. The broadcast finally seemed to stop, but like I mentioned, we will get more in this chapter. So this chapter, chapter 1118, is called quote-unquote Be Free, and the title is so One Piece. The whole show is about freedom, and Luffy's goal of being Pirate King is pretty much his dream of being the freest. So you know, with such an on-brand title like that it's gonna be a big chapter, and oh boy, it delivers. So the big chapter begins where the last one ended, with the ancient giant robot sinking under the sea after War Curie's attack. It thinks about Joy Boy while it is sinking, and I think we should have known that it wasn't the end of this giant robot, since why then would all the Gorosei show up if only one of them would one-shot it? Plus, there was all that buildup. In theory, War Curie could have just gone alone if that was going to be the end of that. But to be fair, I know that panic is a factor too, and the D reveal was coming up and everything. Still, glad to see more of the giant robot in this chapter. He says, "Where are you, Joy Boy? I thought you were here just a moment ago," end quote. I think when this robot comes into contact with Luffy Gear 5, that will be crazy. But as we saw last chapter, Luffy is no longer in Gear 5, so that might be why the giant robot no longer senses Joy Boy at the moment. It seems with Zunesha and the robot, and so with pretty much anyone who knew Joy Boy, the energy of Joy Boy is tied to when Luffy is in Gear 5 specifically. So after that, we actually hear more of Vegapunk's message. We get his voice from the special Denden Mushi, and he says, and I quote, "The name is ... end quote." It's clearly out of context, so it doesn't give us much to work with, but hopefully it will all fall into place eventually. Either way, it shows us that the Ancient Giant isn't completely done yet, which I'm glad to hear because I want to see him come face to face with Gear 5 Luffy sooner or later. I think we could get some very interesting answers if that were to happen. Then we get some reactions around the world about the interruption of Vegapunk's message. In Alabasta, we see Koza and his father Toto with other citizens. Koza drops our favorite of informative reactions, and I quote, ... end quote. I don't know if it has quite the same effect as it does for a dragon or emu with him, but there you have it. We hear some Alabasta citizens saying, "Assassination from someone? He talked about sins, didn't he? Could it be he was erased by the world government? No way, did you guys forget that Vegapunk was held hostage by Straw Hat Luffy? Obviously the pirates are the ones to blame," end quote. And this raises an interesting aspect of our current situation. How will the world interpret what happened on Egghead at the end of the day? This is why Vegapunk not going after the world government harder is a problem. One would think he, the greatest genius, might have been able to guess that they stole the Mother Flame and destroyed Leloucia. But even if he did have his theories on it, he just said he didn't know who did it. And since the Straw Hat Luffy kidnapped Vegapunk angle has already been spun, it's easy to blame Luffy for his death on the global stage. Either way, so excited to see what the world will make of all of these events, and at least we can expect an epic new bounty for Luffy, even if he gets falsely blamed for Vegapunk's death. Leave your thoughts in the comments for what what you think his post-Egghead bounty will be, and I can't wait to get to the new bounty because honestly, his current bounty is so much lower than it should be. We then cut to Whiskey Peak, where we can see Mr. Nine and wife Miss Monday and their son with other citizens. These two make such a funny pair, and I'm all for it at the same time. I love that they had a son too, another detail that makes the One Piece world feel so alive. Pretty random characters we met way back when are having kids together. Like, I don't think you see that in a lot of shonen. And I really don't think any other shonen follows up with so many characters so often like Oda does. The citizens say no matter what kind of sins he committed, meaning Vegapunk, I can't imagine that the world government would try to kill the world's #1 genius over them. End quote. So naive. But I guess this kind of confusion is inevitable when people aren't provided the answers. Most people just can't see the government being as cruel as they factually are. We then jump to Dressrosa, and we see Rebecca and Leo talking about Luffy. Always appreciate seeing Rebecca, so I'm all for it. Leo says, so it is Luffy land after all, and Rebecca is the one to have to be like, of course not. But if someone like Leo can think it, then you can bet people who haven't come to know Luffy at all will think it as well. We then finally get back to Egghead Island, where the action is. Trader York informs the 5 elders that there are still 2 Vegapunks remaining, Lilith and Atlas. York says that quote-unquote punk records will continue to grow even after Stella's death. And the 5 elders decide that their next top priority is not Luffy, but eliminating the remaining Vegapunks, not counting the trader of course. So this is very good for Escape because it gives yet another distraction when our guys are so close to escaping already. Unfortunately, they very well could succeed in getting to Lilith and Atlas, although I would like to see at least Lilith escape with the Straw Hat ship. After all, she was our first Vegapunk reveal, and the fact that she's supposed to embody evil as punk number 2 makes for a fun dynamic to explore. Unfortunately, I can't see both Atlas and Lilith escaping. I think that would be overkill, or underkill if you will. Obviously, Luffy and crew will escape, but there will definitely be more losses before they are in the clear. That's what I think at least. So now we get to the main players finally. We catch up to Luffy, Dory, and Broggy, who in this chapter reach the shore and jump to the Elbaf ship, joining with Bonnie, Sanji, and Frankie. You can feel the relief now that they are all here together. How could they possibly stop them now when they're together and this close to escape? My confidence based on how hopeful the situation looks for the Straw Hats now is at record Egghead highs for sure. And it'll get even higher after the new awakened sun god Nika joins the party, but we'll get into that in a bit. For now though, Bonnie is already being incredibly useful. We saw how problematic Vice Admirals Bluegrass and Doll were being for the Giants last chapter. Well, Bonnie turns them into little girls, including the Sea Beast weapon, which allows the Elbaf ship to set sail. Man, I know I've been saying this ever since we found out about the powers, but how broken are Bonnie's fruit powers? It's insane. Look at how dangerous and effective in battle it makes someone who's 12. And it'll only get more broken, as we'll see. Let me know if you think there are more broken Devil Fruit powers in One Piece than this one, or if you think that this one just might take the cake. Doll says, curse you, Bonnie, and Bluegrass says it all when she says, I feel ashamed of my current helplessness. What an absurd ability, end quote. It'll be funny seeing them say these things in their little forms, especially since Bluegrass was so old in the first place. It'll be a big contrast. Bonnie is hilarious too. She provokes the Marines hilariously saying, wouldn't it be a big issue for you if I got away, Marines, end quote. So crazy to think everything she's accomplished as a pirate at her age, and I love that her attitude is so entertaining too. Like I've been saying, if a 9-year-old Shanks could be on the Roger ship, I think Bonnie would make a great addition for the Straw Hat ship, both personality wise, but also because of that broken, oh so broken power. But I'll get back to that at the insane end of this chapter. So Luffy meets Oimo and Kashi, and we're told Kashi is almost knocked out due to the doll attack from the last chapter. Probably not the proudest giant moment, but hey, at least a 12-year-old girl neutralized the threat. We also get Sanji contacting Nami to tell her that they have successfully set sail, and Nami says they're taking off too. And the million-dollar question, Luffy is doing what? If you guessed he's in the kitchen eating all the food he can find, then you would be correct. Nothing shocking for Luffy, but it will be important for what's about to come. Elder Mars joins the party as he flies to the Elbaf ship and shoots a beam from his mouth. Not a good few chapters for the Elbaf ship, I must say. 3 giants put up their shields together to block the Mars attack, and like with the Spartans, there is strength in numbers when it comes to these combined defensive shield maneuvers, but at the same time, part of the Elbaf ship still catches fire. Like I mentioned, the ship has been taking a recurring beating, and I'm hoping Oda isn't setting building it up to sink. But I gotta say, repairs will definitely have to be made if they make it back to Elbaf. Luckily, there shouldn't be much more damage since Luffy uses Gear 5 again and gets out of the ship to fight yet again. Luffy's power makes the sea and ships shake. That's a crazy detail right there, and it makes me wonder to what extent can Luffy's power manipulate the sea itself. I'm fascinated to learn more about this. He says Bonnie, and she says, "Ah, Nika." Luffy says, "Let's go together. You want to punch these guys, right?" I love how simple yet accurate, not to mention funny, that question and invitation to fight is. It's a perfect thing for Luffy to say. Bonnie, understandably at first, is like, "It's impossible, I can't do it." You remember that whole situation against Saturn where her attack was getting weaker, and he even told her that its powers might allow you to transform into any future, but the more you know of reality, the narrower your future possibilities become. Saturn said her weakness back then was the result of her beginning to think Nika wasn't real. And I said back then that growing up doesn't necessarily have to equate with losing that imagination from childhood that would make her powers so strong. I said that in contrast to Saturn's pessimistic view, Luffy would help reawaken and even fully unleash her hope and thus power. And that is exactly what happens here. Luffy says, "I don't really understand your power, but I know you can do it," end quote. And yeah, this chapter's dialogue for Luffy is so on point, not understanding anything yet reassured that everything will work out at the same time, and that confidence is clearly infectious, since Bonnie remembers the first time she met Luffy on Egghead and how Luffy told her that he looks like Nika when he is free. Then Bonnie thinks back to Kuma's flashback when he promised in front of Ginny's grave that he will raise Bonnie, and then she uses the Toshi Toshi no Mi power to change into Nika number 2. She says, "Distortion future, the future where I'm most free." Again, there's that oh so important concept of freedom in One Piece, and that is definitely the kind of future that Luffy is going for too. The one where he is most free. Luffy laughs and says, "Way to go, Bonnie," and Bonnie says, "I did it." We see a giant Bonnie in Nika form, aka Gear 5 Bonnie if you will, with the same pose as Luffy on the cover of One Piece volume 106 we're told, an epic pose to be sure, and we see a giant Gear 5 Luffy laughing like the first time we saw Gear 5 in Onigashima. Bonnie's transformation is exactly the same as Luffy's, with the white clouds floating around her neck, white and curly hair, white clothes except the sash, eyes with ring-like pupils, which we all know are big in One Piece if you've been paying attention. Think Emo and Mihawk. Marines and Giants are surprised seeing them, and you see what I mean. First, she embarrasses Vice Admirals that were giving Giants trouble with not even the craziest part of her power, and then uses her power to become the second Sun God Nika at 12 years old. It's insane. The Giants say, "What is that? Whoa, there are 2 Nikas." And we've covered this in a video before, but this may not even be the end of the Nikas. It's possible that others like Zoro could awaken similar Sun God-like powers. The obvious way would be for Bonnie to use her distorted future power on the Straw Hats. But another is a possible further or second awakening for Luffy. We already saw his powers affect his surroundings and even turn Kaido to rubber. It's not crazy to think that like he spreads his philosophy, his powers could rub off on his crewmates as he masters it more and more, allowing them to fight more freely too. Either way Oda goes about it, there are clear paths to the number of Sun God Nikas growing until they become an unstoppable flame of freedom, burning down tyranny and the world government. Let me know if you see that happening too in the comments, or if you think Bonnie is gonna stay the only other Nika-like one. The Marines are so confused they ask, "Are those white giants?" Whatever that means. Warcurie and Peter sense a weird presence, so they are hurrying towards the Elbaf ship. Unfortunately, it seems like they may no longer be conveniently distracted after sensing this. Meanwhile, Luffy and Bonnie are ready to face Mars. Mars eloquently says, ... while Luffy says, "Let's go," and Bonnie says, "Yeah." Now, I don't know how fast the other elders will get there, but I would love to see Luffy and Bonnie crush Mars, or at least definitively overpower him. I'd like to get a clear W against at least one elder before we leave, and I think this is a good opportunity for that. Obviously, I don't think they'll kill the seemingly immortal elder, but come on Oda, just show some overpowering please. That would be such a nice cherry on the cake, since Luffy really couldn't do much against Warcurie, even with help. And then there's a question about, wow, how many times can Luffy activate Gear 5? And I guess a lot. Now, in defense of him using it here again, he never used Gear 5 to the limit after he ate the shark meat, and now he ate more food this chapter. So it's not that shocking he could reactivate it once more. However, I really don't see him using it again after it runs out right here, so this is the final Egghead stand. And I hope from now on, they're always carrying some Viking shark meat, because wow, that stuff is a game changer. The scary thing though is that we know even weaker gears could potentially shorten Luffy's life, at least that's what we were told, and he's been using Gear 5 so much that we may really be approaching a Pirate King-like ending here, where like Roger, Luffy's life is cut short shortly after he becomes the Pirate King. Let me know what you think. Could Luffy's life be cut short after all these repeated uses of straining gears, or is that too dark a future for our shonen protagonist? Then in the final panel of the chapter, again we see the ancient giant robot activate, even though he's under the sea now. He says, and I quote, "He's here," end quote. Which to me is like obvious. It seems like he says that every time Luffy goes to Gear 5, but perhaps this will have an interesting twist where he in this case maybe doesn't mean Joy Boy. And again, even if it does, at least it's a sign that we haven't seen the rest of the giant robot, and hopefully he'll join the party before long. No break next chapter, so we got a rare 3 chapters back-to-back situation, which we should all smash that like button for. And it may be my own video, but I will still be smashing to show my solidarity as well and appreciation for Oda. Now, if you enjoyed all these sun gods in this chapter, then you won't want to miss our video on Luffy's Second Awakening, link on screen right now. Like and subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.